Hi, I'm Cynthia Marks, and I head up the Holistic Psychoanalysis Foundation, founded by my late husband, Dr. Bernard Bale. Welcome to And Now Love. Adria Marquez and Jesus Trejo are with us today. This will be new and different, having two people at one time to talk with. We've never done this before, so thank you for being our first. Adria is the founder and CEO of Latidos Media. For more than 15 years, she has specialized in the realms of social impact, DEI strategies, and advocacy. Additionally, she has deep experience in marketing, partnerships, and community engagement. Adria clearly comes from a place of empathy and love, as she has placed herself in the position of caring for the needs of others in very difficult situations. She hails from El Paso, Texas, and Ciudad Juarez, Mexico. Jesus has been a stand-up comedian for over 19 years. He is passionate about comedy and storytelling, as is made clear by his continued success. He is well known for his Showtime specials, Stay at Home, and Practicing. He has been featured on The Late Late Show with James Corden and The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon. Also, he is the author of two award-winning books, Papa's Magical Water Jug Clock, for which he received the Pura Belpre honor, and Mama's Magnificent Dancing Platitas. He is the host and executive producer of Tacos con Todo on First We Feast and the PBS docuseries Roots of Comedy, where he explores stories behind the jokes. In and amongst all of this, he has been a loving caregiver to his parents, where he found ways beyond the obvious to help them feel comfortable and happy, and to help himself find a smile or a little relief during the especially tough times. Beyond all of these excellent things that these two do, they are married to each other and have a beautiful newborn baby girl, Zoe, who I just met. They are learning how to balance family, work, shared time, individual time, and all that comes with bringing a beautiful baby into the world. So welcome, and again, thank you. And there's so much to talk about because you guys have so much going on.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Of course.
We're excited to be here.
Well, I have some questions, so I may look down occasionally, and I
it's
may
okay.
just forget some of my questions. But first of all, for you, your little angel, both of yours,
Yes.
is only 7 weeks old.
Yeah, she's about to be 7 in a few days. Yeah.
And you
7 weeks.
7 weeks.
Yeah, 7 weeks.
Yeah.
And you are now no longer pregnant. You were obviously pregnant. This is what happens.
Yeah.
And I wondered if you could share how you see what your friends have been through, or people you know who have been through pregnancy.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the things that seem important to pregnant people or people who are bringing children into this world today?
Yeah. You know, it's been just quite a journey and a wild roller coaster, as I like to say. You know, I feel like people share stories, or, you know, people tell you and share their experiences. But no matter how much you prepare or how much people share what they've gone through, it's like you really don't know until you live it, right? You know, you can hear from other people's stories, and, you know, I like to have a good balance of being prepared and researching and hearing from other people to know what to expect, but also not try to take on other people's experiences and just kind of be present and live that experience myself. So it's been just a wonderful journey to go through, very different, both expected and unexpected. What is most important is just having support and having community and friends to reach out to, having a solid partnership, you know, with your significant other, and to say we're in this together. And although we both may be going through this experience in our own ways and feeling different things, having that solid partnership and reminding yourself that you're in a team is essential. It's essential. Oftentimes Jesus is the one reminding me, holding up the mirror and saying, you got this, and reminding me that everything's okay, or vice versa, just talking through things. So I think the most important thing is just having that support, both from your partner and from friends, from family. Crucial.
So being pregnant is really a gift. And I don't know that all of us recognize it as such. There are babies being born every day. It's hard to remember that this is a unique experience, completely unknown until you're in it. Even though it happens every day, it's an interesting thing to tackle. This thing is happening all around me all the time. Yeah. It's happening to me, and I never knew any feeling like this. Yeah. I never had this kind of fear. I never had this kind of love. I never had this kind of curiosity about this thing. Yeah. It's pretty amazing.
I would joke about that a lot because, you hear about how it's such a miracle, right? And the process and what a woman's body goes through. Yes. And her mind and her brain, and you're like, what a miracle. And I'm like, this is the most common miracle because we all got here somehow.
That's right.
So maybe it just doesn't get the recognition that it should, right? Because each journey for every woman is so unique and so complex. And so just recognizing both the duality of a very common and reoccurring miracle, but still a miracle in itself. Yes. Right? Like what an individual person goes through in, their pregnancy journey or birth-giving journey is so unique. And it truly is a miracle. What our bodies can do is astounding.
It really is. Yeah. I mean, that was the first time I think I ever really felt a miracle was when my son was born. It's like, how did this happen?
Yeah.
But to that, I remember also being pregnant and thinking how awesome and unusual it was. And then again, how everybody else is, here because somebody was pregnant. Yeah. It makes you think about other facets of life like that too. So what I think is commonplace or what I think is super easy may not be so. Or when I apply it to myself, it may not be the same as it was for Jack or Betty or Sue or Alan, even though you think we're all walking around with the same ideas in our heads, or the same solutions. We're really, really not. And I think that's something to honor all the time, is that we are not all experiencing the same thing the same way. And even though something physical like giving birth to a child is sort of the same thing, it's not the same thing.
It's not. And recognizing that people go through this experience in different contexts with different resources, with different levels of support, right? And I think that's where the empathy should come in, right? To say, well, this is something universal that so many people go through. Well, it's different for every person for a reason, right? And some of those things are individual and internal, and some of those are things outside of our control too.
Yes, and some of us struggle, some of us don't want to be where we are, some of us are so excited, and all of those things are something to honor.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Especially when they involve, bringing a little person into this world who needs to live a life coming from love. So we have a lot to do to help ourselves as parents and pregnant women, and I don't know that I've ever asked a dad this question so much, but we were talking a little bit, you were talking about your partnership and how important that was. Is it sort of weird to kind of be out here while all this is going on over here with Adria and Zoe, and do you feel out there or do you feel in it?
I mean, you definitely feel connected. I mean, it's Zoe came about because of, us being together, so there is
There'd be no Zoe without you.
Yeah, there'd be no Zoe without us. And we quickly find out that there's no us without Zoe. It's like a natural progression,
Isn't that weird how that happens?
It's weird. It's there's a sequence to life. And I think, as the more life unfolds and you have these unique experiences, the more you understand it. But even my understanding is so different than the next person. It's basically what you guys have just touched on. I think there's a sense of being connected. There's a sense of awe, there's a sense of understanding. Like the family is expanding, but so is our level of comprehension to this thing. So it's like, people talk about that the universe is ever expanding. I think it's the knowledge that's like makes us grow as a family, as a couple, as a person, as a dad, there's so many identities that grow with every experience. So yeah, it feels awesome. It feels pretty cool.
And it's amazing to be sort of part of the ongoing human experience.
Sure. Yeah, it's the most relatable, common experience that we know of. I mean, it's life and death. Those two things that are guaranteed that we're going to experience at one point in our lives, and either we're going to experience, know someone. Like it's one of those interesting things. So.
Yeah, they cannot be avoided.
They cannot be avoided, but they're very beautiful in their own way.
Yeah, and I would say he was involved in not just supporting me and helping do tasks that I couldn't do because I was pregnant, but also just something as simple as bringing joy to our day to day. That's when I say I'm so lucky to be married to a comedian, because the laughs were always abundant. To sort of always be surrounded by laughter when you're pregnant is just like one of those things. You're like, okay, if I do anything right, it's going to be this, like I'm going to give that gift to my baby of her constantly feeling my laughing, and like, that's in great part thanks to her father. So.
That's really precious. So it was pretty easy for you to feel like you were part of the process. And I think it helped when you, tell me otherwise, when you could see that you being part of the process was making Adria happier. And I would imagine there'd be days you're like, oh, geez, I'm so tired. But I still have to do all these things. I still have people I promised I would get to help. And I've got work to do. And you could take some of that steam off.
Yeah, it technically wasn't anything different that we were doing that we weren't doing before. But it was just kind of like now I was under the scope of this process, this kind of unfolding pregnancy into unfolding motherhood, fatherhood. I was a part of it. It's almost like whether I wanted to or not, we were still living our lives as we were, but now we have new experiences that we're doing it under. So yeah, it felt really nice that we were still connected, if not more, during this thing. So
yeah, I think both of us loving what we do for work and being so invested in our careers, we both had to learn how to move at a different pace. Personally, myself, I was consulting, and sometimes being okay with reducing the amount of work I was doing, or kind of like softening the landing into the third trimester, right? Not taking on more work than I wanted to handle.
Yeah,
or
that's hard to do.
It's hard to do. Sort of
do.
slowing down when you're so used to, this culture of hustle,
Right.
forcing yourself to slow down and give yourself permission to feel a little bit bored and a little bit of the slowness. And, with Jesus, it was a similar process. He's so used to being on the road and traveling. And towards the end of it, it was, okay, like I need to be close by a little bit more, in case of, or so also, going through
Big
a similar
shift.
experience of learning how to slow down and what we're so used to always.
it's a big paradigm shift,
Yes.
right? It's such a massive shift, and I read this where it said it's like kids are starting a family forces you to slow down, but isn't that the point? Because we are so, I think outside of that we're built to pick up patterns and trying to improve and trying to find this thing. We want to attain this thing, but it's also part of, I don't think either of us thought we were gonna have a family or this kind of thing. It's like it wasn't something we really considered. I speak for myself that I was like, I thought maybe having a family wasn't in the cards for me, but right now in this moment it's like we're allowed to have a different opinion. We're allowed to pivot. We're allowed to flight correct, and right now I can tell you that it's like after reading that I'm like, oh, that spoke to me. I think at a deep level that is like, isn't that the point, to have you slow down? One, I think initial reaction is like, oh, I don't want to slow down. Like, well, I want to do this, I want to do that. And now maybe you're not able to do that, or the version of doing that is different than what you thought it was. But again, isn't that the point? I think there's some truth to that.
There is. And I mean, and look at what came into your life, and Zoe, and the feelings that come along with Zoe, and the feelings that now the three of you have together that you might not otherwise had if you didn't slow down.
Yeah.
I mean, you could still parent and not slow down.
Yeah, it's like slowing down, kind of looking at things different, or as people call it, quitting. No, I'm playing. But it's all how you look at it ultimately. Yeah, everything happens for a reason. And if you leave yourself open to things, you'll see those little magical signs,
Yeah. It put things into perspective. I mean, we had this one funny instance in which, as we were getting really close, I think I was maybe at like 37 weeks, Jesus was on his last trip, that he said after that, I'm not going to travel because we're going to be sort of in waiting mode. He was up in the Bay Area. And, he kept checking in, everything okay, everything good. And we had talked about what does it look like, if a baby comes early, he's like, I'm going to be ready to jump on a flight or rent a car if I need to. And this one night he's on the show, and usually I know, not to call or text when he's on stage, but I also know that his phone is probably on don't disturb, or like I know that he won't have his phone out, while he's performing. And this one time I'm at home, I'm just sitting in my recliner being very pregnant, and I saw that he posted something on his stories. I was like, oh, he must be done with the show. And so I gave him a call to say goodnight. And I just hear, he picks up and I just hear this loud echo. He goes, baby, I'm on stage. Is everything okay?
Oh my gosh.
And I said, oh my gosh, yes. Please go back to what you were doing, and hung up immediately. I was like, he's never done that before. But there was something comforting to know that like he was paying attention.
Yeah.
And that I know his ability to bring that show back to where it needed to be. Yeah. But that he was checking on us, he was ready to answer. I was like, wouldn't it be funny if I called, like, hey, can you send some cookies? Because I'm having some cravings.
Yeah, there's a level of mindfulness, or there's a level of responsibility. It goes to the word love. We started the podcast by hearing the word love. So there's a level of that in all that we do. And, when you're in that position, there's a sense of you're stepping into this new responsibility. So maybe you're a little more hyper aware that maybe if I was like my third or fourth kid, I'd be like, it's like, I'll check my voicemails afterwards.
Later.
But again, you spoke to that earlier. It's a new experience. It's something very new, and you wouldn't know until you're in it, and you know why you're in it, so it was just my way of like, I don't know what this is gonna be, but I could put forth an effort of mindfulness and showing that I care, and also you want to be there for those things. It's
pretty exciting stuff.
Yeah, it's exciting stuff. You don't want to miss out on those things, even if it's send me some cookies,
Yeah.
So.
Well, I think that again, one of the best things we can do is figure out how to love these little creatures that are living inside us, that we're already trying to make into loving individuals who have their own paths, and that's a hard
bacteria.
thing to do.
In case you're wondering, bacteria, that's what she's describing.
Exactly. Well, some people think about it like that.
Yeah, kids, absolutely. You're absolutely right. Yeah, it's special.
Yeah. It is. And here you're into it a giant almost 7 weeks.
Yes.
It's so funny in the beginning how that period of time, it's like, whoa, it's been 7 weeks.
Yeah.
And, down the road, like in a year, you'll be like, it's been a whole year. And then you'll think back about 7 weeks. It's like, that was like a day.
Yeah.
But it's so monumental, isn't it? All the things that happen in this 7 weeks or the next 14 weeks. And you think about this, I don't know if you are doing this, but I used to think about that little baby being kind of that way for a long time. And it shifts so quickly. And I mean, that's so much fun to see all these changes, but we get so invested in a particular stage and then it's gone.
Yeah. I've been thinking about that a lot. Just the perception of time is so different during this stage, and as of late, I recently had my 6-week checkup, and everyone says like, doesn't it fly by? And I actually usually respond like, I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet where I can say it's gone really fast. And I don't mean that in any negative way, but I think I have felt every passing moment of the last 6 weeks, right? Because there's just so much. Well, one, there's all the logistics of tracking all the hours and how many hours has it been since she ate, and you're tracking literally every minute, you know, of the day that passes. And so it feels like the days and the weeks kind of blend into each other. I know at some point I'll look back and be like, where did my baby go?
That's
Now
right.
she's a whole child. I like to think that like we've stayed super present, you know, for the last 6 weeks. And sometimes that also feels like, oh, we feel really tired because the days feel really long. But we can say that we've experienced and felt
Yeah.
felt every passing hour of the last 6 weeks.
So how do you find time to also, like, you're still recovering?
Mm-hmm.
How do you find time to take care of yourselves? Like, you take one night, or I don't know what your sleep patterns are at home, but
There is no pattern right now.
Yeah.
You know, it's like,
I guess, well,
Yeah.
7 weeks.
yeah, there is no pattern yet. I don't think we have a proper
It is
sample
day
size.
by
but
day.
Yeah, it's day by day, but it's like, to answer your question, I think self-care just looks different at second by second, minute by minute, hour. You know, we could keep going on, you know, day by day, week by week, month, you know, it keeps going. But I think in the day to day, there is moments in between where it's kind of like step in and, you know, she has time to herself, whether it could be any number of things. It could be watching TV. It could be just sitting there. It could be a cup of coffee. It could be just staring off into space. You know, it's like whatever time is allowing us to do. Sometimes it's taking a nap. Sometimes it's, you know, going shopping at your favorite grocery store. You know, it's like those things do so much for us because at our age, you know, we've identified what we like and what recharges you and what takes away. So if you're able to do even just a little bit of that, it's like, I think that's a form of self-care.
Yeah, it takes a lot of communication too, right? Like communicating to each other and sort of learning how to express your needs. And I will say that when you're in postpartum, sometimes things can feel so overwhelming that you don't know what you need. You know, you need support, but it's difficult to figure out what to ask for.
Sure. What
And-
shape does that come in?
Yeah, what's the right thing to request? This is where, you know, Jesus being such a wonderful partner and has so much experience with caregiving, he understands when he steps in and tells me, you know what, I think you need an hour to yourself. Why don't you go to your favorite grocery store? Or, you know, why don't you take a nap? And encouraging me and making that space. A lot of things we do, we take turns and there's shifts and so he's equally involved in the changing of diapers and the feeding, and also to express it for himself, you know, I'm gonna take a nap, or starting to get out and do some shows, and he says, oh, I really enjoyed being back on stage. You know, he stays local,
Yeah, local. It's
but
nothing.
he's
Yeah.
like, but it was great to be back on stage, you know, for a couple of hours. And so having that open dialogue, right? Did you eat yet?
Yeah, self-care is such an important thing, which I also would love to know how you identify, and when it comes to self-care, what you need and how do you get that? Because that to me has always been like something that I had to learn, you know, being a caregiver. How do you reach out, or how do you express to somebody what it is that you need for self-care to get you back to your baseline or where you would like to be? Like,
Yeah.
is there something you look for or look to ask?
That is a huge topic. So, according to Bernard, many of us don't even know that we can ask that question. We don't know that that's a place where we can exist. We just continue to maneuver through life in this little world of turmoil. And because that's what we know, we don't know we're entitled to anything else.
Yeah.
And I think it's really a shame that a lot of us have not come to a place where we understand we deserve to take care of ourselves. We deserve to be taken care of by others also. And so really what we need to do as individuals is find out why we're lovable and what it is, who it is that we love, and know what love feels like. And once we know what love feels like, honestly, deeply, we can honor that we deserve it and that we can gift it to ourselves. We can say, wait a minute, what is this feeling I have today? I don't know, maybe that nap, I could do that instead of this, and be okay with it, and realize that you're giving yourself this thing that is making you healthy, stronger, whatever it is that you need. And to be able to recognize that then in other people, I think can only be done when you totally invest in taking care of yourself, you can see that other people will also benefit from it, and it won't be a task or a burden so much for you to help those around you that you love. It'll sort of come naturally. So to that, Mr. Great Caregiver.
Not a great one, just, doing my honest best.
So you stepped in and took care of your parents when they were not able to fully take care of all their needs on their own.
Yeah, caregiving, manifests at different times in different ways. So there is not one kind of caregiving. I always imagine like caregiving is a two-way street. It's like almost like this podcast, right? We know our energy levels right now and what we're able to kind of afford to speak into the mic is like you're in charge of your own levels, but there is somebody in the soundboard going, hey, like I need to give you a little more volume, or I'm getting some feedback. This is, it's a two-way street, much like we are, I'm detecting that you're peaking, or it's a little low. What's going,
Yeah.
But also they can detect their own levels as much as we can identify certain levels. Like I think caregiving is the same way. The mind is built to pick up on patterns. So it's like when certain patterns aren't the same, you have this sense of, you mature very quickly because you're like, I got to help out. There's this sense of responsibility early on.
That's what we hope.
We hope, but I think it happens when you're a kid. It's like translating is a form of caregiving, when your parents don't know the language and it's like, oh, I think I know this, but they're having a hard time communicating. There's a sense of responsibility that's just, nobody tells you to do, but you're like, oh, I think they're, you want to help. It's love. It's like a natural thing that we all have.
And that also feels good when your mom is struggling because she's trying to communicate something to someone and she can't get it across, and you can. It feels good for you to take that sort of anxiety away from her.
Yeah.
Feels good for you as a human.
It's caregiving. Caregiving could be a parent taking care of a special needs kid. It could be taking care of a pet, a young person taking care of an elderly loved one, and vice versa. There's so many aspects. So it's like, it's a natural occurrence, I think, to want to support somebody in some way. It's like we would hear it takes a village to raise a kid. And I did a documentary with them in 2017 called Care to Laugh. We were the subjects of this documentary. It was my parents and I, and, I'm following stand-up comedy. That's my North Star, but I'm also a caregiver at the same time, juggling both. So you can even call it the motif of the documentary, where it's like it also requires a village to help somebody age gracefully. So caregiving is the opposite equal reaction. It's like for an aging parent, it's like you're caregiving to this final point. But when you have a kid, it's like it's beginning point onward. Caregiving requires a community. It requires support of a partnership, loved ones, community, family, what have you. So
Yeah. Jesus often talks about how the tables turn, right? From raising a child to raising your parents. And, I think about that a lot. And, when we talk and think about what kind of tools and resources are needed for, a pregnant woman or a new mother, it's like, how come we don't talk more about the tools and resources that we need to care for our aging family members?
I know.
It feels like such not a taboo topic, but just something that we don't talk about enough, right? There's no equivalent of the prenatal courses that you take to like, how do you navigate, how to show up for aging loved ones. It's like you're navigating a whole world that nobody prepares you for.
Yeah.
And we're all going to go through it.
Yes.
Not everybody gets to the different stages of life, but it is just as common as, for people to transition out of this life as it is for people to transition into this life. So why don't we learn more about it, right? And talk more about it. You find out so many people go through it without sharing it.
Yeah, I've even talked about it on stage. It's like how the tables turn and it feels like I'm raising my parents now. I go to a class to learn how to change a diaper, but I wish they had that for older loved one. Nobody shows you how to change a big diaper.
No.
There's a lot of trial and error, but
That's right.
It's much needed to have that equivalent for
on the other end,
the later stage in
and
life.
especially you're dealing with someone, so many people who are still cognizant of what life is
Correct.
about and have learned all these lessons themselves, and now they're in a place where they're surprised by all of these things that they need, and what am I going to do with this diaper? Or I mean, it is true. It'd be nice if there were as many instructions. I wonder, though, if we don't honor that as much, because for most of it, it ends in sadness, you know. And so it's, I think, hard for all of us to prepare for sadness. And we're sort of more in denial about that happening. I don't know if that was the case for you, but
I mean, it's the case for everybody. I mean, sadness
Yeah.
is imminent, you know, but it's like through a lot of help and, you know, having good communication with your person and community, and also self-reflection. I mean, it's like to be able to land in a place where it's like you challenge your own thoughts. It's like it should come from a place of a celebration of life. It's what you're doing for Dr. Bale. I mean, it's a celebration of life by remembering works, and we should be challenged definitely to look at it in a different way. It's very hard. It's easier said than done.
I
I can sit
know.
here, blab my mouth, but when you're in it, you're like, man, this is painful.
it's tough.
It's tough. So
It's lonely. I remember being very lonely and thinking, I don't know what tomorrow's going to bring, because I'm clearly seeing that each day is different, and I've gotten to a place where I think this can't get any tougher. And the next day would be a new challenge, and I would get through that day, and I would have taken on that new challenge when the day before I said, you can't give me anymore.
right.
And it is really something.
And look how interesting that is. It's like with you're like, I don't know how I'm gonna get through today. It feels very lonely. I think that's the number one thing that caregivers talk about. And with caregiving at an early stage or later in life, there's always this loneliness, you know. It's like, and it doesn't have to be that way. And it's almost like the allegory of the cave. You just see things a certain way, but when you come out, it's almost this blinding. When you get out of the cave, you see this blinding kind of reality of like, oh, I think people want to support my efforts, and they just didn't know. So how? I mean, it's it's.
I was just going to say basically the same thing. It's like you put yourself in this space, and you either don't want to ask for help because you want to do it all yourself, or you don't think other people would want to help.
Yeah.
I mean, why do they want to come in and do this? I'll just do it myself.
And it's comical if you think about it. It's
Yeah.
like, I need help. Well, what do you need help with? What? Well, I don't know what, but I need help. I don't know what it is. Well, if you need help, if you know you need help, you got that much. What do you
Let's
need?
go further.
I don't know. You know, and that's okay too. It's serious, but it is funny.
It
You know,
is.
it's like that's the only way you can get through something like that. Like, how do you diffuse tension that can oftentimes be very heavy to carry with humor?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also wonder if one of the light bulb moments, that I experience both through loss and now through birth is there's a focus on the entry into life, the birth of a baby. And I like to say it's romanticized because there's a cute baby.
Yes.
There's a beautiful baby, and but really the process of what a woman goes through to give birth is not a pretty one, right? And so it's just romanticized because it's like babies and cuteness and the beginning of a life. And so when you think about on the other side of life, when you're helping someone transition out of this life, it's also not pretty. It's not pretty to watch. It's painful. But ultimately, isn't grief also a feeling that comes from love, right? It's grief is, I think, a feeling that so many people have a hard time responding to, and that's where the loneliness comes from, that people don't know how to support someone that's going through grief. But when you look at grief, really it's a feeling that is based and rooted in love.
Yes.
Right.
It's hard to deny that. Yeah.
Holding somebody's hand through that moment is probably one of the biggest honors that somebody can go through. And so what kind of tools and resources are there to support someone through grief if we look at grief with a lens of love, right?
Yeah.
Versus just this is a really sad thing, I don't know how to handle it.
Yeah.
I suppose there are some resources out there, but wouldn't it be nice if they could be marketed in a way that they're as available as the resources you have when you're going through
Yes. Easily
pregnancy and
accessible, yeah.
childbirth?
Yeah, and that there shouldn't be shame around grief.
No.
Right? Like some people, it's just like, oh, it just feels awkward to talk about. I don't
Yeah.
want to burden other people with my grief. Like there should, like, what if we destigmatize the feeling of grief as something superhuman, and your experience is love for that person that you're missing,
Yeah, it should be 100% okay. And being able to notice that grief should be something that you, as the grief watcher, looks at and says, okay, this person can use a little love, whatever that means. Let me dig in. And maybe that person says, I don't know. Like you were saying, I don't know what I need, but I need help. But just to keep asking the questions and hold the hand and be there. But I think a lot of us can't, that's stigmatized. Grief might, mean you aren't strong, that you can't just keep on plugging ahead. We're not supposed to feel stressed or anxious or worried. But that's all part of being human. And I think you can experience those things and accept them in others when you come from this place of love, which again, we just have to learn how to start from love.
Yeah, absolutely.
So then you mentioned that humor is a tool that you could use in the caregiving process. And it sounds like you've been able to share that via your podcast maybe and these documentaries. Like, what does that mean? Or what kind of thing would be funny and create happiness for either the caregiver or those being taken care of? How did that gel?
There's the unspoken rule in comedy where it's like you're able to kind of speak to the communities that you're a part of. Your personal experience is what you can bring on stage, and I think because that was my lived experience, and I'm still in it. There's a feeling of connecting with people who are going through the same thing, right? When somebody goes to a comedy club, they're either relating to what's going on with the comedian's saying, or they're drawn in. It's storytelling. So it's either I love storytelling and I love comedy. I feel like comedy has been my North Star, and I've dedicated my waking hours to walk in that direction through storytelling. So when I talked about caregiving, I found a community in AARP. It's like, at the time when we did the documentary, they were working alongside Google, right? And they did a big research project, and they wanted to see what it was that caregivers needed: time and laughter, right? That's the two things that someone in the midst of caregiving is going to need. And that's when they created an event called Care to Laugh. Caregivers and caregivees were able to come down to a comedy club, have dinner, watch a comedy show, and just a break to their day-to-day. And being able to do that when you talk about your experiences at the time, like, for example, like I had this experience where I talked about my mother gave me a call and there was a bunch of supplements that she would take, and she gave me a call. I need these vitamins and supplements. Do you mind picking something up on the way home, a CVS or a Walgreens? And I remember going in there, and one of the things that she needed was this thing called hair, nail, skin, right? That the doctor had told her to take. So I go in there. The cashier was very nosy. I mean, there's nobody in the store at 1 a.m, so they strike up a conversation. So she kind of scans this hair, nail, skin supplement, and she looks at it. She looks at me. She looks back down. She goes, "How long have you been taking these for?" And I'm like,
What?
None of your business,
Sure, first off.
It's for my mom. She goes, okay, So it's these moments of like that situation would not have happened if I wasn't a caregiver and I had that open channel of like, hey, can you pick this up for me? They're funny little things. I've even bought. I look back to me in my 20s buying diapers. I go, nobody cares. But you're so embarrassed to be seen with this box of diapers. And I used to go to CVS at 1 a.m. to buy them because no one was there, and you can buy little packs. You can kind of hide them. And again, same cashier, she goes, I see you buy these all the time. Who are they for? And I was so embarrassed. I was like, oh, they're for me. I hate, doing laundry, so I just buy these, trying to diffuse the situation again with humor as best as I can.
Yeah.
Not a knock against her, just, trying to diffuse it. And she goes, they have men's sizes. I said, no, I like the women's sizes. They're a little more snug on me. But these moments may seem not fun in the moment. You're like, oh, I'm so embarrassed that they're asking me. Why, ultimately, humor serves as my art form. I take those stories to the stage, and I can tell it to a room full of caregivers and caregivees, and they'll laugh because they'll have a version of that.
They will. That's
great. And that's how those tentacles of connection are formed. It's like, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
And that joke will resonate more in a room full of caregivers, or it might not resonate in a comedy club, but it might resonate with one person that goes, brother, I know what you're going through.
I got that. I'm not alone.
Yeah.
But I think it even would resonate with people who are not caregivers or being cared for, in that they could imagine themselves in that position, someday, and then when they're there, they'll remember that and
Don't
think, oh,
remember it.
Bring a giggle when
That's
they're buying
right.
Yeah,
diapers
right.
at 1 in the morning.
Did Dr. Bell have anything around like pain and time, like humor or anything like that? Where it's like as it connects, because there's a level of love there, I think, where you're able to look back with love and go, man.
yeah, to some degree. I mean, I think he was very thoughtful about his life experiences and how, as an older person, he could look back and see how directed he was because of, taking this road to the left or that road to the right, and then turning some of the missteps into humorous experiences that weren't really missteps. I mean, they still led him to be where he ended up being and gave him the life experience he had. So, nothing is truly a misstep. It's just an opportunity to look at something in a new way, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, being able to look at it under a different lens is
Yeah.
always funny.
So if you could just take the opportunity to stop, like, coming down on yourself and say, okay, why did I do this, or why am I here, and what can I do with it? Where can I go with this thing that I just experienced? I think that this comedy business is so interesting because I do think that so many of us think we're alone in an experience. And when you hear somebody on the stage talk about some simple thing that happens in, let's say, in your life, and you go, oh, I never thought of that as being funny, or I never thought of that happening to anybody else. And then everybody in the audience is doing the same thing. It's like,
Yeah.
and you can kind of take a sigh of relief and you feel like you're part of a community. Whereas before you were like this alien, wandering out in space on your own,
Yeah.
thinking you're the only one who's got to buy diapers for their
Yeah.
Correct.
elderly mom.
Right.
So thank you for that. That's a big deal to kind of help us figure out a way to feel less alone.
I think it definitely is a connector. It brings people together. I think, I mean, there's more comedy clubs than ever. Why are people going to a comedy club so much, or theaters? You look at so many great comedians who are touring, and everyone is like has their own style of comedy. And why are they going to this thing? It's almost like church-like, and it's like they're looking for a connection. They're looking for a moment of laughter to get, to get their mind off of their daily problems, possibly.
And we go so far out of our way to go.
Yeah, it's
really
it's not
something.
cheap. To kind of bring it full circle to what we're talking about, it's all love. It's like I want to go share laughs, and I'm going to bring somebody I care about,
Yeah.
and share this laugh with, or I'm going to go alone out of act of love for myself. It's like I deserve to laugh.
Yeah.
I need to laugh.
Right.
So
I think we all need to laugh. It's really interesting now that you say that, how many different places you can go to find comedy these days. It's just it's like propelling itself. It's great.
yeah, it's a boom online. It's a boom in live performances.
And also as a spectator, it's really interesting and fascinating to watch sort of the energy that happens in a room, and that every room is different. I've seen Jesus practice his material, and oftentimes, I might be hearing the same material in different shows, but it has different effects in different people. And so the makeup of who's sitting in the audience, it really becomes this exchange of energy between who's on stage and who's there. And so it's really cool to watch Jesus have a very disciplined approach to writing. And, people think that you just get up and you're funny and you say funny things. There's actually a lot of discipline that goes into crafting a story and practicing and exchanging that energy in real time with the people who are there, because the audience is going to change for every show, and that energy is going to be dictated by who's in the audience every time.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, comedy is so interesting that even with everything you just said of like preparation, years of work, it's like I've done it for a while. I prepare on a daily, I perform regularly, but all those things can be rendered useless because there is so many variables to control. You can't control all of them.
No.
You're just gonna have good nights and bad nights, and you might have 2 bad nights in one night, because you do multiple shows. Kirk Fox is a comedian who I love his work. He says it jokingly, but there is so much truth to it. It's like breathe out love, It's like he's like they just want to be loved, man. It's like 'cause sometimes a heckler is like they're yelling or being disruptive in a certain way. Sometimes they don't even know they're doing that. They think they're helping, or they think they're meaning it in a good way, or sometimes they're just drunk, or any number of things. He's like, if you could just handle that with love. And I've always remembered that that he's told me that. Sometimes you have to resort to what I call like a verbal ass whooping to this heckler because that's maybe what it needs. But if you do it with love, it's like it's not going to be, you hope it's not taken the wrong way. I mean, I don't know how it's received, but there has to be a level of crowd control that it's like, all right, it's like you can have back and forth. All right, we're good. Okay, I'm going to go back to the show because everyone around you paid full price and they hate
Well,
to
that's
listen to you.
tough
So,
to do.
but you do it with love, and she's seen me kind of like be successful with it and oftentimes not successful with it, but that's the beauty of it. That's what you're like, okay, I think I learned something from this and I can go back and do it again.
But that must be part of what keeps this journey interesting for you, in that you could be working the same set for a few nights, a few weeks, but every audience is going to make that set different.
Yeah, oftentimes these feelings of imposter syndrome might arise because you're like, I know I've done this well before, but I can't do it here. And I'm falling into a pattern, not being able to get through an audience, but comedy is trial and error. Actually, you had a talk about imposter syndrome that you recorded was around imposter syndrome. And I remember that helped me a lot because I was able to look at that and be like, okay, sometimes we want to control so many variables and we induce our own level of like imposter syndrome.
Yeah, I mean, I think the concept of imposter syndrome is sort of being somewhere that you don't feel deserving of, right? And so whether you're on stage or you're in a position of power at work or, and there's all these variables that tell you like you're not funny enough or you're not smart enough. And even just the concept of imposter syndrome, I believe, is something that has been imposed on people, I think, to add to insecurities. And many of those insecurities are built around systemic failures, right? To have people not be able to succeed. But I think ultimately, when you remind yourself that what you bring to the table, whether it's to a stage or to a meeting room or to a business, is unique because of your own lived experiences, right? And you stand on that. I think that's ultimately what is the best form of engagement and having a two-way conversation with someone, right? I believe that this is both in comedy and in career, is the best comedians are not ones that just stand on a microphone and speak one way, but it's the people who are able to have that dialogue.
But to read
the room, to understand that a heckler is maybe just a person that's having a tough day or just having to have fun, and you look at this as this is a two-way street. We're both in this together, right? I think it's a good reminder, when you step into a meeting or something that you find intimidating, and to say, actually, like, I'm not alone in this. My lived experience has brought me to this room, and so what I have to say matters. And also, I'm not the only one talking here. I should also listen. And it helps make it less heavy and less intimidating.
Yeah, that's a great thing to keep in mind.
Agreed. Yeah. What about, like, has Dr. Bell, has he done any work around that, like, specifically?
Sure. I think he believes that many of us are most of the time imposters in our own lives.
Interesting.
That we are doing what we need to survive and not recognizing that we're not doing what we are meant to be doing. We're doing those things that unconsciously we've been told we need to do to support the trauma that we've carried that we don't know how to let go of. We've been told unconsciously, most likely, that you're not really very lovable. And so you put yourself in positions where you're not really very lovable. And so you're pretending to be this thing that you're not. And you come from a place of not being very lovable. What does that mean? You're shy. You don't feel like you deserve a place at the table. There's this person that seems to be wanting to get to know you in a romantic way, and you're like, well, I'm not really very lovable, so I'm going to figure out how to undo this. And even when it comes to career, I am going to be an imposter. I learned from my grandfather and my mom that the only path for me was law school, and oh, that must be what I want to do, but it doesn't resonate, it doesn't sit. But you're an imposter. You're going to law school when really you wanted to be the camera person at the circus on Saturdays and, mind the zoo the rest of the week. And you can't do that because there's shame to it, or you might not be able to be in this comfort zone that you created for yourself so that you could exist without all this love, or with being able to choose your own path. You geared yourself, you fashioned yourself to be okay in the presence of others, to not disturb the status quo.
Yeah, I mean, and that's something that I've seen a lot in, especially in work. I'm trying to advance, representation, diversity, and inclusion. As of late, I've been seeing more of a pushback on that concept, right? And to say, is it imposter syndrome, or is it that some odds have been stacked against your success, right? Like, how do you differentiate to say, oh, I have imposter syndrome and this is something that I have to work on, and yet it adds another thing that you have to worry about to push through? Or to say, actually, it's not imposter syndrome, is that I don't have proper guidance, or I don't have the right leadership, right? Or I don't have the tools that I need for me to be successful in this position. Or my path to get to this position was very different to this other peer who got to this position through different resources. Being aware of that is just as important, right? Because then you start to understand what you need to ask for.
So why do I put this on myself? Why am I feeling this imposter syndrome? What does that mean for me? What is uncomfortable about this? Why am I here? What am I doing here? What do these people mean to me? Are they helping me? Do they see that this is a back and forth, that we're having these conversations? Wait, maybe I don't even really want to be here. I mean, maybe I'm really an imposter.
Yeah.
So, but I did want to talk to you about what you're doing in the world of activism. And I know you're probably taking a little break here with Zoe.
Yeah, a little bit of maternity leave.
So, but what led you to that, and what does activism mean for you in the work that you do?
15 years ago, I started down the path of advocacy. It can have different names: advocacy, social impact, activism. Initially, my work started with a nonprofit. And so I, started, my expertise was marketing. And so doing marketing and social media and content for nonprofits. Later that evolved into working across different sectors. So for a consulting agency where a lot of my clients were nonprofits or campaigns, sometimes political campaigns.
So all of these groups that you were supporting with your work and your knowledge were advocating for something.
Yes. Yes. So social issues, mission-driven organizations that advocate on a variety of topics. Ultimately, a lot of my work is focused in advancing or advocating for values, shared values, advocating for immigration or support for homelessness or preventing, gun violence in our country.
And what would an example of your work be, say, toward the endeavor of advocating for immigration?
I've worked with nonprofits that do work in immigration, and my hard skill set is marketing and communications. And so I often work with my clients in helping think strategically about how to come up with helpful information to share, right? To educate people around the challenges that immigrants face, or, how to shape more narratives and understanding.
Is that information for the immigrants themselves and those receiving the immigrants as the new country or town or city?
Yeah, it could be both. In my case, because marketing is sort of a lot of the foundation of the work that I've done, you think of it as how do you reach people with messaging, right? Or content, nowadays with social media. And so it's how do you tell stories to everyday people who are going about their everyday life to care about this one issue, right? You're ultimately reaching people who are being saturated with messages all the time.
Of all sorts. So
of all sorts.
That nonprofit is also in competition with the woman who's trying to sell white t-shirts.
Right. You have to think about how do you educate people on facts, on what does the context look like? How does it relate to you? Why should you care about this? And so it's what we like to call sort of like movement building, or sort of shaping culture through content, through information. And so a lot of this becomes, a back and forth and building relationships, with people and getting them to care about different missions, different values.
Well, I think that's of extreme importance right now. It's so crucial. And, we need to do the same thing here with our podcast. We're not selling anything, and we don't want you to come and pay us money to hear our message. We just want the utmost important thing, which is love, to be known across communities, starting with each individual and then, carrying it forward where we lift each other up. And it's amazing to me to think that we give this out to anyone, which is fantastic. And, hope that some people respond and understand how precious that message is, which I guess is the case for anybody who's, trying to do something to some degree of success on social media.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I'm still learning what it's all about.
Yeah. It's ever evolving.
Yeah, I guess
and that's,
it is.
That's the challenge too, that, many organizations and nonprofits in particular oftentimes don't have the resources or the budgets to keep up with their competitors. When you're scrolling on, whether it's Instagram or TikTok, your little video that you put together to advocate for this one thing is competing with this influencer who has very different resources than you do.
Yeah.
And so then the challenge there becomes, how do you make sure that what you put out there is a substance and that it is something that captures people's attention, because the resources are very limited for many organizations.
Right. Well, thank you for doing that. I love that you have found a way to focus on helping those people who are interested in helping the rest of us.
Yeah, and even like another thing too is like I've come to learn that your work revolves around educating the person that wants to get the message out there. Is like to follow the right and proper metrics, because I think we're everyone wants, say, views or this kind of thing, but it's like depending on what the project is like there's certain metrics that you should value over others. And then sometimes you don't want the most views, you want the most people to kind of interact and have a conversation about. So I think that's also kind of very important to kind of dispel certain things and kind of shed the onion layers to find the level that's pertinent to the message.
Yes, because
really
easy
interesting.
enough to say I've got 6 million views.
But of what?
right.
I've learned that seeing her work, and I'm like, oh, it's not the thing that we're all chasing. I mean, sure it is in a way, but at the same time, it's kind of like, oh, there's something at a deeper level, just like anything else. There's something at a deeper level.
Yeah, how many actually get to the kernel of it?
The kernel, exactly.
And I think in today's world, it's so easy to get caught up in the rat race of, I got to pursue the views and the followers, and it becomes really transactional.
It does.
In order for people to be strategic with their resources, it's helpful to understand who is it that you're trying to reach and for what, right? Having very clear understanding of your goals, right? And because it's very common as a marketer to hear like, we want to reach everyone.
Okay.
Who's your target audience? Everyone. Okay, let's get deeper. When you do reach the everyone, what do you want them to take away from the 3 seconds, if that they'll look at your message? What is the thing that you want them to remember? And so oftentimes it's really just guiding and helping each other look at the North Star, like what is the ultimate purpose? Forget what we call it, but let's get back to the root of it.
What are you doing that's important, and how are you going to get yourself to a place where you can help these people that need the assistance?
And how do you measure that impact? How do you measure that you're being successful in doing that? For you to know that you're being successful in doing it, you have to be clear in what that mission is. So sometimes having those conversations is helpful, right? Is just getting out of today's noise and getting away from the controversial debate. Just saying, okay, let's get back to the basics. What is it that we're trying to do?
Because hopefully it is just today's noise.
Yeah. And tomorrow is going to be a different noise.
Yes.
So.
Well, thank you both. I could talk to you for another couple of hours, but I think I've taken up enough of your time. It was
Likewise,
such
you're
a
very sweet.
pleasure.
Yeah,
thank you for having us.
So fun. We've had such a great time.
Oh, good. And do either of you have a social media presence or website that you'd like to share with us?
Sure, you can go to my website, jesustrejo.com, for upcoming shows and events. And I post videos and upcoming tour dates there.
Great.
Yeah, and my consulting website is letidosmedia.com. So yeah, check us out, and thank you so much also for the work that you do through this podcast.
Oh, that's nice.
This
Thank you.
is such a wonderful conversation. You know, when you reached out and shared what this was about, immediately we're like, this is such a cool opportunity for both of us to do this together, and you know, to talk about our work, but also just how we do it.
Yeah.
You know, as a couple and in partnership together, you know, we're really honored and flattered that you thought of us and that you had us here.
Well, such a pleasure, and you two both are totally all about love. So
yeah.
Thank you. There we go.
Thank you for watching, and please get in touch with us with any questions or comments, and we will see you next time.